Hold on, I can't hear you. So hold on a second. Let's see what's going on.
I was muted the whole time.
Oh, okay. Sometimes that happens.
It's gonna be a great replay for the first seconds of me talking there. How are you, my friend? How are things?
Things are well. How are you?
So good, thank
Good.
you. And what a lovely way to start the week with you here. So thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
I was just about to say, this is the first time I've actually ever met and spoken, despite being connected for ages, isn't it?
I know, yeah. I was like looking back, so we've been connected for so long, and we've never had a conversation. So I'm glad this is we can do it here.
Me too, man. I just thought, why wouldn't we do this properly, like together, like basically meet in public? And I think this is the way things are often done on LinkedIn, especially like you find someone, you interact with their stuff, eventually you get to DMs, and then you finally meet them like this, and then one day you even meet in person. It's literally all in reverse, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's quite funny.
We're here now. The cool thing is we've got a bunch of people who are already showing up, which is awesome, and
Cool.
It is what it is. We never know how many we'll get on something like a LinkedIn Live. And I want to brief the audience, those of you watching right now, if you want to ask questions, Morgan and I are going to probably take a few in a bit. But what I'd love to do is just simply hang out for an hour. I think it'd be really cool for us to talk about like our views on the state of things, the state of the industry, kind of what's going on, what we're finding with outreach, with B2B, and just being very 2026. War stories are cool, but at the same time, I always loved being practical and useful for people. And of course, we'll take questions too. Let's do this, because it might be that some of the audience is mine and don't know of you, which is crazy, because you are such an O at this stuff. Just a bit of background. I mean, your bio is so nice, man. The last 10 years, you've been an absolute rocket. So do you want to share background, like where you come from, like what are you doing, and what's your space right now?
Yeah, so Morgan Ingram, and 10 years ago, I started out in tech sales. So for those of you that may not know the terminologies or things of that nature, I started off as an SDR, and that's someone who goes out and hunts to get meetings only, no closing business. So cold calling, cold DMs, cold emails, all that stuff. That's what I started. And what really evolved and elevated my career is I started a YouTube series and a LinkedIn series called the SDR Chronicles, documenting my journey as a rep and just sharing best practices. So that led into me getting promoted to a manager, over 13 reps of that same team. I went on and created more content, which evolved my brand on LinkedIn, and then got recruited by a sales training company, John Barrows Sales Training, and I was there for 4 years. So I trained Google, Slack, Snowflake, Zoom, all the top tech companies on how do you outbound, how do you actually schedule meetings, how do you grow your book of business. And then I took those best practices and learnings to start my own business today called AMP Social. And I focus on the same thing, generating pipeline, getting you more meetings to close. And in the past 6 to 7 months, we've contributed to over $90 million in pipeline for these B2B organizations. So excited to be here today. And I'm glad we're going to finally meet and chop it up.
I know, absolutely. Man, I love it. And it's just so nice hearing that kind of climb. There are a lot of people who have experience to a degree, but then try and make a jump to trainer. And there's got to be some level of like being on the pitch for a while and have tried different things to make you really credible, which you've clearly done. And I think there's just so much value in being someone who's been at the coal face and really understood like what it requires. For those who don't know me really quickly, I've all the way back 23 years ago. My first job. Yeah, man, I'm 45. So my first job was.
Great for 45. You're holding it down.
Okay, you're my favourite now. Thank you, man. Hey, I mean, the wrinkles are coming, and there's a lot more grey hair, but it's a very flattering camera and lighting setup. So 23 years ago, I started selling internet marketing. So B2B internet marketing. 2003. This is when people are like, I don't know, man, the internet really. And so it was, and post bubble burst, it was really fascinating. So I was really fortunate to be in that space in a company that was predominantly ad sales in publications, so like print publications. And that was like literally all day, every day, grinding phone calls. So I learned so much. Then team manager up to like conferences, so in-person conferences, online conferences as well in the mid-2000s. Then into recruitment. So as a sales director, So it was all spreadsheets and training heads of sales and things like that. So just so much fun. And then 2014, I exited London, stayed in B2B sales, but for me, now it's been what we're looking at 12 years of my own thing. And I think just like you, it's really nice to be able to go back to businesses and help them with the training. And it's I think it's so interesting that we might look at professional salespeople, and it's stunning how you a lot of practices and approaches that are frankly born of managers 2-3 generations back. And like seriously, I trained someone recently, and their team is stuff. It's just so interesting seeing what things don't work. Can I propose this? Why don't we riff for a minute on cold outreach in 2026 in B2B? Let's start there, because you're, B2B outreach anyway, but there's so much we can talk about. And a lot of people are like, it's dead, there's no point, it doesn't work. And that's actually missing the fact that it is actually the go-to approach for so many businesses. Why don't you share, reflect, what are your thoughts on B2B outreach specifically when it's cold? What does a 2026 version of that look like?
Yeah, I think let me take a step back. Words are very powerful. So when you say something is dead, what you're now claiming to yourself is that this is not possible, and your brain and your subconscious will not find the answers to do the thing that you want to accomplish. So I want to start there. And if you're saying something is dead, you're actually stating the claim that it actually is dead. And so you won't find information to do the thing that you actually want to do. So I want to start there. And I think that's very important to understand the language of how you speak to yourself and what you articulate. I would say that it's harder because it's easier to do outbound. You can just plug it into Claude, you can plug it into ChatGPT, and you can go crazy. So what I'm telling people when I work with them is the number one thing that you need to be really good at, that AI cannot actually do itself, a user would have to tell it to do it, is get really good at observations and connecting the dots on business acumen. And the best way to do that, and what we work with clients on, is understanding, okay, in your business right now, what are the reasons people do work with you? What are the reasons that people actually write the check? And so we reverse engineer that, and we figure out what are those compelling points. And then we create narratives and we create outbound messaging around those things. And so that way you could say it's more, people say it's single-based prospecting or interest-based prospecting or warm prospecting. My goal is just what is already working in the business that's closing revenue, and then how do we articulate those stories and those narratives around that based on the observations that we find. And if you take that route, your outbound will be overall better. I think there's, my last point to this is there's creativity with this, right? I'm a big proponent of video prospecting and voice notes and handwritten letters and meeting people in person. I think that element's there, because if you look at the statistics in the last couple of years, more and more people are becoming more lonely, and they actually are looking for people to connect with. So if you could do something that's memorable, people also will respond to you. So that's my current state of how I think.
It's really interesting. You make a really good point here about perspective on statement in the. I think rather than people going, "Oh, it's dead," and what they mean is, I've seen it appear to be easier, or I don't want to do it, or I feel it's scary. I always think a better approach is to say, what would need to be true for this to work? And if you're I'm precisely the same. You reverse engineer from what is working, and it might not be working for you yet, but you reverse engineer from at least the outcome, which is how would it need to look for the ideal person to want to buy from me? And suddenly when we do this, we realize it's not about, have I got something that's relevant to them? Just because technically they could buy doesn't mean they should. One of the great examples someone said to me recently was, if you have feet and I sell shoes, doesn't mean you have to buy my shoes, does it? That's just relevance. What we need instead is leverage. And I do remember like a decade of cold outreach told me, like, what works best is something that works for them completely. That is something like a shared mutual connection, even, or like the easiest in I found was something like the customer I currently work with is also working with them. So it's like, well, you don't need to trust me yet. You trust this company here, and we've worked with them, so they've gone working out if worthwhile. And you can be a complete nobody approaching them cold, but if you go in with this thing that's known, this commonality, suddenly the door opens so much more readily. I just find it's so interesting looking at this because I don't think it's changed much, Morgan, in decades.
Yeah.
This approach typically seller-centric. I want to, as opposed to buyer-centric, which specifically is what would the experience need to feel like for the buyer to want to receive this interaction? Because there is a world in which our approach is welcomed, right? And if I really want to unpack more what you're saying. So I'd love for you to deeper. I don't want to go near attraction or marketing and creating inbounds yet. What are your thoughts on this idea of saying to yourself, how do I create an experience where the buyer in that first interaction actually starts leaning in rather than tolerates through politeness this approach from me?
Yeah, so I think, no, this is Charlie Munger. So we have the basically kind of look reverse engineering, and then there's inverse thinking. You probably heard this concept before, but people haven't heard this concept. Inverse thinking is, what are all the things that would be absolutely terrible for a buyer? And then you just do the opposite of that. So, for example, it's like, what are the things when you reach out that people have online said, this is absolutely terrible? One of those things is hope all is well. Okay, so you probably shouldn't add hope all is well in your messaging, right? Okay, what's another thing? Pitch and connect. Okay, so if I just come in and write a 2-paragraph long first message, that's probably going to get deleted. Okay, so we shouldn't do that. Or another example is, okay, when I reach out to someone, I just have everything is about the product. So you lead with like, here's our product, here's how amazing we are. People don't like that. So you reverse engineer that and think, okay, now that we've done that exercise, how can I now be memorable by doing the opposite of these things? So that leads into doing actual research, looking at, if you're selling B2B to enterprises, 10K reports. Have they posted anything that I can mention? Oh, they live in this city. Is there something fun I can mention about this city that I know to bring something to life? So these are things that you can do to stand out. And one of the clients that we worked with, their team did extremely well, but one outlier on the team booked 17 meetings on LinkedIn. And within that, I think it led to like $850,000 in pipeline for her, believe. And the main reason that she did so well is that when she would start messages, she would see where people would live and she would create like a fun experience around it. So let's just say it was Paris. So she would like, I mean, y'all can do this if you want, but I thought it was funny. She would create images around certain things that would be an experience. So she put like herself and the prospect at the Eiffel Tower, like,
nice,
you know,
so,
cool. just stuff like that, right? And so I'm not saying you do that every time, but she was leading with something unique in an experience, and then she'd be like, okay, here's what we have to offer. You just have to think a little bit outside the box.
It's about being memorable as well, but I think just that thing of like, what does that first look? Address the room as well. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. There's a couple already in there, Morgan. I'll bring up in a sec.
Cool.
Also, some people are asking if there's a replay. Yes, there is. The moment this is finished, it will be up as a replay on LinkedIn. Here's the thing, though, on the point you're sharing, and I just want to bring this forward because it's such a pushback from teams when you meet them, when you talk about when they say to you, yeah, but when you're approaching a business leader cold and you happen to get through, and I know everyone's busy, but they're really busy. And they are like, okay, this call's got through to me. When you start with storytelling, because that's the buzzword, or like, or like, have you ever imagined when this, that kind of thing? It's so interesting when the frontline salespeople are like, dude, you can't do that. They're going to be like, they're just going to hang up the phone or like roll their eyes. Oh, here we go. You're going to give me that. As though, and the reaction is an interesting one because what they're doing is saying that's entitled. Entitled in the sense that the buyer would want to listen to this. Is that so? I'm going to cut it out and cut to the chase because isn't that what they want?
Yeah.
There's so much we can say, but like, what's your reaction to that? It's an interesting pushback you often get.
Yeah, 100%. Or people will say this doesn't work within my region. That's another one as well. Like things of that nature. I get that. But the way you have to look at that is the story is important, yet we have to get people to be open to hear the story. So no, I would not suggest someone to start a call and be like, hey, could you imagine like a Disney movie trailer? Like that's not gonna work. They're gonna be like, that's not what I'm here for. So when you look at a cold call though, every call has 4 stages. The first is the introduction and the hook to get someone to be intrigued. The second is the value prop and the story, which I'm going to get to that. The third is once you share your story or value prop, people typically will throw objections at you. And then the last part is how do we actually close the meeting so that they want to, spend time with us. So the first part on the introduction typically has to do with like, I'll give it a random one, not a random one, and one that we typically coach on. And I call it the honest approach. So basically, if I were to call you Richard, I would be like, hey, look, Richard, you don't know me. I don't know you. But the reason for my call is, and then I would go into that second part, which is then the story. So
you've muted. I don't know if it's me. It looks like you're muted on your end.
We're back. I don't know what
happened.
You're back. Yeah, it switched me off. I don't know why I did that. But I was saying the reason for my call is, I was actually just talking to a VP of marketing last week. And a big thing that they're mentioning to me is that they're not able to work with their sales team to convert more quality pipeline. And so one thing that we just uncovered is they have been looking to incorporate influencer marketing to make sure that they can do that. And I'm curious, like, is that on your radar? That's how you incorporate a snippet of that story. So then people are like, okay, that is something that I might be dealing with. And then they might be like, tell me more. And then that's when you can dive deeper into that actual story.
And that part is so crucial we get right because it is an angle based on leverage, which is something compelling to them. But what is so important is it's relatable leverage. As in that qualifying question afterwards, I mean, is that something you're finding? The answer's yes. So it has to be researched in the right way. It's about alignment there because you have that thing of like, there's something specific we've just unearthed. There's that novelty and curiosity loop being opened. But if it's not aligned to something is super compelling, you're now competing with the option of just don't bother, which is a big one. And so that bit's usually the bit that matters most because in my opinion, you can't over emotionally yet, but you can in terms of practical value in the sense of, okay, in their head they're going, Morgan, I have no idea who you are, but I'm going to have to listen to this one. Okay, I do need to listen to this. This is related to outcomes that matter to me. And from that, because they're willing to listen, we now can, like you say, take them on this journey. And now, this is the crucial bit, it's about setting the scene, isn't it? They want to listen. There's a difference between being polite and being willing to listen.
Right.
And what that first hook does, which is makes them go, okay, I'll actually listen to this. I don't even know who you are, but like, actually, you've got this is valuable information.
Exactly.
So crucial.
Yeah, and that's where you want to go, right? Is that they'll lean in. They're like, okay, this is something different than what I'm hearing from other people. Let me give this person an opportunity and a shot, and that's what you're looking for.
And the thing to remember is there's no such thing as 100% optimization, because the guy or woman that this would work with tomorrow might have had a rubbish deal, fall apart, and now you called them. And
Right.
so we've got to be chill with the fact that, it's just not always going to work out, but it doesn't mean that the approach doesn't work. And
Exactly.
you tend to get out what you put in. And this is where AI can lose, because if it gives you these say this thing, it's generic enough that it could work with everyone, but it's tight enough that it might work because it's a broad macro industry trend.
It is.
And then I think this is just really important guidance for especially those in their first year. It sounds really cool because you've got this industry trend, but for them they're like, oh man, that's so mid. Really? This is the best you come up with? You have to have something a little bit more research, and of course that's hard. It takes time, but I think what you touched on is something really crucial, which is almost like the gossip or the thing, and it like something someone said, and we don't want to be making this stuff up, and actually what you find is the route into your next sale is often in. When you write down the quotes from the person you're speaking with,
Yeah.
And I
100%.
found this, I remember so well, when you get on you start with, hey, I've just been speaking with Jane at this company. Do you know them? Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, she was saying this thing, and obviously it's not sensitive. She's saying that.
Yep.
Despite not knowing me, I'm on the inside, and that it's things like that, isn't it? That just show that you're safe and worth spending that time with.
Yeah, and I think the core of that for everyone is the word trust. Because right now people are less trustworthy, so it's harder to build that trust with people. So in everything you do, you want to think about, how do I actually build and elevate trust with the people I'm looking to talk to and speak to? And that allows you to then create these messaging where it resonates and it's relevant for people. That's the whole goal here.
So looking at, and this is a perfect segue, because I wanted to bring in trust and look at outreach beyond calls. But let's take, say, LinkedIn, since we're on here right now. Trust is not just in decline. Trust has dropped off a cliff, man. Wildly.
It definitely fell off the cliff for sure.
It's seriously dropped off a cliff. And so what's interesting is that we've moved from many years ago, not just on LinkedIn in general, moved from many years ago, a world where you could say something and you'd be believed. And in fact, you'd be believed because you're wearing a suit. Or you'd be believed because you're in a nice skyscraper, or you have a nice thick business card. Now you can artificially synthesize authority and show up in a performative way and have made all the noises that people were going to build trust and yet have none, because now we're sounding or looking like everyone else. So before we go into the kind of more attraction game, what does this mean? I just love these starters. What this means, or even actually keep it at LinkedIn. What do you mean? What does it mean for DM outreach? We're now still cold, but it's DMs.
Yeah.
We know there's all banging out so many messages. It's almost guaranteed. If you dare have some leadership kind of title in your profile, you're on a list and you're getting messages. So how do you get above the noise there?
So I think there's 4 different things that you can do. Number 1 is, and also I'm predicating this on you have connected with the person in your first degree connected. Before I say these things, because if you're not, then you have to do an in-mail, and that's a different conversation. But let's stick to you've connected with this person and you consider DM. Number 1 is, I would find supporting screenshots to articulate your message. So what I mean by that is, if you find something in an article or on their website or on a 10K report or something in their job responsibilities, I encourage people to screenshot certain things and then add that as supporting evidence to the message you're sending. Because if we think about, again, inverse thinking, AI can't do that. It can't find a screenshot and incorporate it into a message and send something, from the last time that I checked. And also it has to find the right screenshot, which also is going to be hard for it to do. and you can do it faster than that, and it's going to come off as like a human touch. So like that's number one. Two is we call them just one question statements. Now you could say to a degree AI could do this, but the point of this message is it's just a one liner, and basically you're leveraging trust like we mentioned earlier. So you'll have a message say like, we've been speaking to customers in the construction space, and one thing they're telling us, and then you said quotables from the customers. You put the quote from the customer in there. That's like it's like in brackets, and then you say, do you experience this? So that's an easy way to just start a conversation, again, based on trust from other customers you have. And then the third thing is videos. Basically, I'd just say make an Android, iPhone video, you outside, you walking and talking. It looks relatable. It looks like a human is actually talking to another person. So that's good. And then the other one is voice notes as well. So all these things are a way to stand out. I would add the bonus to that is don't purposely put typos, but I would think about when you're writing a LinkedIn DM as if you were texting a friend or talking to someone in a coffee shop. So I'm not going to give you a template of what exactly that looks like. I mean, we could go into that, but I actually just want you to think about the mindset and the reframe on your LinkedIn messages to think, if I was texting a friend or if I was chopping it up with someone in the coffee shop, what would this look like?
I love this. And there's so many little nuances here I think we should look at. So just a few that spring to mind, then I'll have you suggest some too. A really good one is over formal, and it feels like you're maybe weirdly almost hiding stuff. So, dear Mr. Moore, nah, man, I'm not, just like it doesn't work. You know, it's like too formal to offset probably something vacuous. That's what you tend to find. The other direction, too familiar, is like you haven't earned that right yet, which is why it doesn't work when you're walking down the street and someone says, hey, how's it going? Like with their clipboard and lanyard, you're like,
right,
we aren't friends like that yet. So this means it's a play. And so of course it's somewhere in the middle. Hi or hello is completely sufficient. And you're right, it's these things at the end with the greatest of regards, Richard Moore, Esquire. You know, it's not really what we want. It's like
we're going crazy.
You know, it's too much. So it should be just like, thanks, Richard. Right? I agree. It's like it's a bit like it's with a friend. You need to say it out loud because then it sounds like it's like, actually, do I need to clip it and have two words become one with an apostrophe so it feels colloquial? And you might think this is nerding out, but it's these details that can make a really big difference. Another one is like when it's a first connection, if there's been no messages, I will do text first and they respond. Now I might pivot to voice note because voice note allows me to bring so much in the way of dynamics and emotion. But what's interesting is I feel that this is from testing, about a third of people, if you lead with a voice note as your first message, they're like, oh man, really? The voice note thing? And a lot of people, it's the same with video actually, they're like, oh no. Yeah. But in play works really well. One last one is, InMail is interesting. InMail has a vibe about it, right? A bit like when you see a post, but it says promoted, you're like, nah, next.
You're like, I'm out of here. Yeah.
It's subtle, but it's there. So InMail, it's like, oh, you're trying to. And the thing to remember is, this might seem cynical, but we are always, same with email as with DMs, we're always trying to filter the volume. Which means if you make it easy for us to identify, probably based on how you present, likely to be like a sale of some kind or an approach I don't want, you make it easy for me to delete. So when someone writes hi and that's it, I'm like, okay, one of those where you're going to try and get me to like just delete. I don't even need to do anything else. And it's things that send that signal of this is eventually going to be a sale. One add on it, just a little nuance though as well, is considering that you're so right that we need to have one singular question, like super brief. Paragraphs as a prop don't get answered even when it's your friend on WhatsApp. You're like, I'll deal with that later.
Yeah, exactly.
But when it's one question, right, but the problem is often the question overlooks what you're entitled to an answer to. So I remember someone once was like, would love to connect. Just out of interest, what's your story? Like, really, what's my son? Of course, being like, yeah, like it's like what's the one? What challenges have you got in your business now? I'm not gonna suddenly say, "Oh, my challenges." Also, by the way, the answer is none of your business right now because we don't know each other. So I think it's really important. You know, exactly. It's like the question has to be tight and super specific. And if it feels like an interview question, finding the industry is changing a lot. It's like it's clearly a leading question. So, in the words of David Ogilvy, the customer is not a moron. She's your wife, which means they're not stupid. They're falling. That if you wouldn't fall for it, nor will they. And I think
100%.
the just be normal suggestion really makes a big difference. Any other little nuances you'd add to this outreach approach?
Yeah, I want to comment on what you said as well. So I have three things that I kind of notated. So I want to go back to what you said about the videos and voice notes, and I want to clarify that for a lot of people as well in that context. 100% agreed. So when I first started doing videos and voice notes, I think it was novel. I mean, this was years ago, so 2021. I think it was so novel that people were just like, "Oh my gosh, like, what is this?" Right?
Yeah.
So I just said, let's lead with the videos and voice notes. I'd probably say especially in the last year and a half, you could still do it, but like it's not as impactful as it once was. So I do agree with you in terms of make that first text, written message, whatever it is, that good granular question. If they don't answer the question, you can also follow up with the video to answer your question with a story. So that way it's like, okay, they did a one-liner, then they sent a video, and then that way you see better results when it's like the second touch.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you. If you're in play, it's 1,000 times better.
Yeah.
And then based on what you said around the question, the best way to think about this is your goal when you're doing a cold DM or whatever it is to show them, like you said earlier, that you're in the trenches and that you're actually working with clients and you're stating an observation and a hypothesis that's pretty credible. So if I'm saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing in the field, here's what's going on, does that align with what you're seeing? Are you experiencing this? It's not a random statement or a random question like, what are the challenges in your businesses?
Yeah.
I'm making a hypothesis based on what I know. And if that hypothesis most likely will be true based on the conversations I've had. And then in-mails have been really interesting. Two scenarios where it works really well for clients that I work with is one, they'll use the in-mail to like a one-sentence in-mail that pushes to the email. So they'll be like, hey, real quick, so I just sent you an email on this. Did you get a chance to check it out? So it's like super straightforward. So that's an angle you can take. Another angle that you can take is when you write your in-mails, you write it as like a narrative or like a story around a use case. So it's like, hey, we work with this company, we saw this, like open to hearing more. So it's very concise. Long-winded emails from what I've seen don't work as well. This is what I've seen though.
Yeah, totally. I think approach we must always have, which is to recognize efficient and effective.
Right.
And what I often find is when I, for example, a sequence of here's a probably good first message, here's then your second message, and then here's like the way we're probing and so on. And it is common and I've now interrupted by saying don't do it, but like it's common that people will be like, oh well, I'll just stick it all in one then. That way it's all just kind of like sorted. And again, you end up with like 3 questions. The thing you got to remember is they don't care enough to want to answer your thing yet. So we have to snag them and like nurture this fragile moment. So I always say that that first message, its job is getting a reply, like a response. Right. Imagine you're paid $1,000 to get a response. What would it need to be? And so what we do then is we're playing a longer game and a lot of people struggle with this, don't they? Because they're like, I just want to get it moving. Can't I just tell them the price? And this is when you see messages with yes, one question, and then underneath and here's a bit about me with an attachment, like here's some information on our website.
Yeah, we don't need
So it won't work ever because I don't want to read it all yet. I would love to read it all when I want to read it all, which is downstream of me kind of digging you as a person. And so it's always important to remember it has to be a back and forth, because ultimately, again, we're back at this point of it's the buyer's experience that matters more. You want them to buy now. You need to be wined and dined a bit more. So sorry, that's how it works. And ultimately, you can always reduce it down, can't you, to the truth that the human animal is essentially distrustful of the unknown, and so until such time as you prove you're worth listening to, it's dark. I'm gonna just invite anyone, if there's any more questions, do drop them into chat, and then we'll bring up a bit more though about, let's go a bit further in. When someone is kind of moving in your direction, never answered something, what are you looking out for? Are there any particular details, ones, like super nuanced things you're looking out for in that first reply then?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the length of how they respond. Are there any irregular words they respond with? And then do they have punctuations what type of punctuations do they respond with as well? And at what time they respond to. So a couple things within that. If you ask something and the length is one word, then it's like, okay, like this person is moving really quick. So, okay, I got to figure out, is there a question I need to follow up on that? Do I need to elaborate more? You kind of see where that person's at. So you got to be like, okay, like how do I navigate that? The punctuations is like, okay, did someone reply with an exclamation point? Like, were they really excited? So then it's like, okay, this is how this person communicates. I get a gauge on like, this probably would be a good person to send a voice note to or a video, right? Because they sent exclamation points. They're probably excited to receive stuff like that. But if someone replies with one word, I don't think I would follow up with a voice note, because like they obviously aren't there yet, right? Another thing I'm looking for is, if I send a message at 8 a.m. and they replied at 8 p.m., then that means, okay, it's probably a better time for me to engage with them in the evening, because that's actually probably when they're more open to respond. So then I need to actually like have back and forth during that time frame. Like it's actually better in that time frame.
A really good point on that. Just on that point there, for example, email compared to DMs are viewed very differently, aren't they? So, for example, the average business leader, no one admits this, leader, like they're looking at their emails all the time, literally all the time. Whereas with the DMs on LinkedIn, some people, thirsty solo creators, for example, are in the DMs all day, whereas the average senior decision maker at like a Fortune 5000, 53-year-olds, let's say, they're not grinding DMs all day. And so, so what's happening is they're checking in when the day's done. And it's very asynchronous, I feel, for many of them compared to, say, email. That's different generationally speaking. I don't know if you'd agree.
Yeah, I agree, because they're not going to be in there every single day at all. So that's why I recommend people to send DMs during the evening time frame, because there's probably a more likelihood they will respond and engage with them.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring in a question in a sec, but I wanted to add just a couple of points as well on their first message back, their reply back. I'm nodding away here because I totally agree with you. When you see, these are what I call implicit cues. So a really important one is when someone is effusive. So like exclamations, capitals can happen as well. Obviously the extreme is like unicorn emojis, but like something that shows they're like lilted by the idea of speaking to you. What you got there is a personality typing that is genuinely quite like open, and they're very likely to respond well to more rich interaction. But video, they're the type that when you send a voice note, they'll say, "How cool that you sent me a voice note."
Right.
Meanwhile, those that are really like pithy answers with a single or two words or something, they tend to not love it as much. So I think that's crucial. And the other big, huge one is detail. When someone stops their day and replies and writes a paragraph and gives you privy to detail, it's stunning how much that represents someone who is approachable and open.
Right.
So I think there's that. And what's interesting is when someone is quite closed and nothing really forthcoming, the way to play is to mirror that approach somewhat. So, you know, if they barely respond even, we want to write back to them, I find, in a way that is a bit like if they were just a team member.
Yeah.
So like if they said we might organize a call or something like that, but they hadn't responded to my suggestion of a date, then my message wouldn't be anything other than, "Hi Richard, what do you think on the above?" Because it's super clipped and direct, but that's what's suiting that kind of persona. So we need to remember, not all people want to hear from us.
No.
Oh my God, it's you. You know,
Not
but
at all.
they are happy to when you present them with something that's worthwhile in the form of
Agreed.
an in of sorts. And I just think that it's, I mean, the more explicit cues of like, I compliment you. That's a really good point, Richard. Or something. Even gently hint at something they want to work on or a struggle. It does hint they're willing to be open. So it's fun to play with those things because it's just, there's some really little cues, and people often think, well, I've got leads, when in fact they do. It's just that the person's not screaming at them, "I want to buy your thing right now." But it's the way they're willing to show up in your direction at such a cold, start point. It's a really big tell that they're quite willing to engage. The big one for me, as I say, is like if they write a paragraph or two, that's a big willingness to want to interact. Huge buying signal.
Huge. And when you run these experiments, it's very, very important as you ask questions to see what has the longest length of response. So I've been doing this myself, and I call it the talk of the town. So why? So if you, I don't know, I don't know if you play video games or anyone wants to play. I'm playing like Red Dead Redemption 2 right now.
Okay.
And so like it's like based on like outlaws, cowboys, and all these different things.
Yeah.
So like when you go to the saloon, like, and you talk to people, like they always go like, "Hey, what's the talk of the town? Like, what's going on?" Right? And so that's the goal. Is you want to think about, like, reframe here is, like you just said, it's not about us at all. It's about that person.
Yeah.
So what I'm always thinking about is, if all my buyers were in a saloon in an old Western movie or TV show, what would they be talking about in the saloon that is the talk of the town, and how can I articulate that message to the buyer? That's how I think about DMs. It's like, okay, everyone is in this saloon talking about this thing. How would I be able to walk in the saloon and say, "Oh, I know this is the talk of the town"? Because think about it. If you don't know think about it this way. This is the best way to think about. You will change your DMs.
Yeah.
If you walked into a saloon and started talking about things that were not the talk of the town, you're getting kicked out of the saloon and out of town. They're not going to welcome you in the town anymore.
They're like, "Who's this guy who's like completely on another planet?" It's about showing you're on the inside and you get it. Yeah. And you know, I know that makes people nervous, but it's like, talk to people, you know, like if someone dares speak to you, or even especially if you're an employee, if you're in a sales team, look up, you know, speak to your bosses or that. It just opened so many doors for me on the calls I made when I bothered to speak to people off the calls and say, what's actually going on? Like, what's hot at the moment? Like, seriously, if it's too macro, then people aren't going to talk about it nearly as much as kind of professional level industry gossip is so interesting to share. Let's jump into a couple of questions before we finish up. I'm loving this though, thank you. I'm glad we did it. Bianca here has said, in high value B2B, so let's look at high ticket deals here. So when your ICP recognizes the pain, but not yet the category or solution, what signals would tell you it's the right time to reach out? And how would content support that conversation? We can bring in the content part here. She's actually added, she has to dash, so she can't listen to the answer, but it will be on the replay.
Okay. Cool.
What's your response to that from Bianca in there, Morgan?
I have more questions than answers because there's some context I need to give the exact
I was
answer,
gonna say the same. So
Yeah.
so you are allowed to make up the context, and that
Okay,
way
cool.
we can answer it.
Okay, yeah. If you want to follow up with me directly, like I can answer it more granularly, but because there's some questions here I have to ask to get the right answer. So let's just say, okay, I'm going to bring up an example. I did this like years ago. So there was a company that I worked with, and the companies, they had a solution that basically helps you take better notes for your sales calls, in the most simple way to put it. And at the time, people knew that was a pain point because AEs were running great discoveries, there wasn't aligned messaging, but the solution they had already said, hey, we'll just have spreadsheets and documents to do this, and there wasn't a category around it. And so effectively what they did is they focused on that pain, but then they had to take a step back and they had to educate people on why this is actually important in the first place.
Okay.
So when you're looking at selling these certain things, it's about educating the people about what this is, and then saying, they're like, oh yeah, that is actually something that's occurring. Then it's like, yes, that is the pain, and then going from there. Problem is, if you say, here's the pain, they might just be like, well, yeah, I guess that's really a pain, but like we already have something that internally can solve that, so it's not that big of a deal. You have to educate them on the new world that you're trying to bring to them, and then share the pain, so that now they can connect both dots. If you share the pain, they'll acknowledge the pain, but then they already know what the solution is because they're doing it internally. So that's like the way you have to phrase it, is you have to educate people on what your solution or your unique packaging is, and then that leads into the pain that you now can solve for them. And then once they acknowledge, oh, this is a solution that's new, I like it, there's a pain, you then insert, hey, this is how we do it.
No, yeah, and there's a lot here that can inform how we look at content as well,
Right.
but also in terms of outreach. So a lot of people may have seen this. There's like this matrix of understanding the buyer's kind of journey, and or categorizing buyers. And there's unaware, problem aware, solution aware. The problem with it is it's missing the nuance. So of course, loads of people are completely unaware, but tends to be they are aware of something. And I'll leave that curiosity loop open and answer it in a sec. The problem with solution aware is, of course, we want them to be solution aware, but like it's rare, really rare, that someone, if you look at someone, for example, here on LinkedIn, a classic example is running a personal branding agency for SMB CEOs, 2 to 20 million turnover, 20 people, and they do bricks and mortar stuff. Okay, so solution aware, it's rare that CEO is going to be like, do you know what? I need to work on my personal brand. I think that's what it is I need. It's like, it's kind of rare because they're not bothered with that kind of content as much because they think it's not for them. So if you go back a stage to problem aware instead of solution aware, what's happening is that it's still informing that solution. So the problem itself is you need a better personal brand. Can you see there's still often the missing part? The bit in the middle, the wide open opportunity that everyone misses is between unaware and problem aware is frustration, or better word, symptom aware. Now what that means in my opinion is I don't know what the solution is. Because I don't know what the problem is. I haven't labeled the problem.
Yeah, we don't know.
But I am, and this is literally everyone, experiencing the symptoms of that problem. So I've used this example a million times, but this is how I put it, is if I have a wheezy chest and a cough, I don't know that I have bronchitis. Nor do that's the problem. Nor do I know the solution, which is that I need a particular type of antibiotics for this amount of doses per week, for 3 weeks, for example. But I do live the experience of those symptoms. So I love that the idea of a symptom, or another word being a frustration. And what I've found, if it informs content really well, but it can inform the first message when you're doing cold outreach, because rather than meeting them at solution and praying and hoping that they're there, or even a labeled problem, you meet them at this inner dialogue that they have. So that CEO again is not going to be like, yeah, I wonder if it's my personal brand. That doesn't come into their mind like that. The symptom shows up as, do you know what really annoys me? We've spent so much money on this new website. We even have traffic and no one's buying it. Just really, I'm just so angry with that. Or like, no matter what I do, we've got guys like SDRs sending messages and emails. Like, no one seems to care, even when we get them on calls. They don't realize that's a personal branding problem. It could be a multitude of others solved by a better personal brand.
Yep.
So interesting is when I found this works so well in content, we're back to quotes again. When you quote that inner dialogue, the way other customers have shared, you know what, Richard, I just feel this thing. You're saying, I see you. You know how you feel this thing. You don't realize it actually represents this thing over here, which indeed we can sell. We can solve with our services. But meeting them there, suddenly it's so much more relatable. I find that's what really works with content. Just that quote, essentially representing a peer of theirs, saying this is how I feel, and they're like, yes, you see me, Richard. Yes, that's exactly what we're going through. What are your thoughts on that? Don't you feel like that's the missing bit? It's a little bit more nuanced, but that's asking almost too much to jump in problem and solution aware for at least the majority.
Yeah. I think it goes back into it is this is what we're again going back to observations. Like this is what we see, this is what's occurring, and you're making a hypothesis, a very contextual hypothesis on what is occurring, so then people can lean in and be like, yeah, that's for me, which is the whole goal at the end of the day.
Exactly. Okay, we got time for I think 2 more. There's Yuri here. This is a fun, quick one for us. When is it okay to pitch in the first message, and when isn't it? Let's create a scenario where it is okay. What would that need to look like?
Yeah, it goes back to exactly what I said. I'm sound like the broken record here, but like you have to come with the observation. There's 3 things that correlate to an observation. One is that it's something that the person has done. So like they wrote a blog post, they wrote something on LinkedIn, or they've done an interview. The second is like the company. So the company is hiring new people, they have a product update, they've made some expansion with their offices, etc. And the third is about their like persona. So exactly what we're talking about, like what are the quotable moments? Yeah. If you don't have one of those 3, you shouldn't be pitching in the first place. Totally. Because then you're going to have a generic message that anyone can do. So I think it's as simple as that.
The greater the leverage, as in the compelling thing you're sharing,
yep,
greater the tolerance in turn by them for your ask. So Oren Klaff, I'm sure you've heard of Oren Klaff and Pitch Anything. So he's a bit of a hero. I love the book. And so last year, putting my money where my mouth is, I was like, I will make a piece of content showing how I cold emailed Oren Klaff and got him to interact with me. But then I needed to actually go do it.
Yeah.
So I did. So I wrote him an email, and like the nuance right there, the guy's in his 50s, and I made a call that he's more likely, because of his level of activity on LinkedIn, to respond to an email than a DM on LinkedIn. So I went email, and I led hard, Yuri, with it was a pitch, but I led hard with leverage. I think it was along the lines of, "Hi, Oren. Here, can I interview you?" I think it was my angle, and then literally next, knowing that was such deep research, knowing he specifically, that one individual, would respond favorably to that kind of language, because I know of him, I'd done my research, I knew that he'd want me to cut to the chase, but I gave him so much chocolate. It was like, I've got this amount of paid buyers in this community that covers selling specifically, and I'm like, it was like relevant to you, 0 favors other than, I mean, obviously I'm asking for an interview, but I'm essentially saying, do you want to be in front of people who could be part of this thing you do?
Yep.
1 hour straight in. "Hi, Richard, sounds really good. Let's set up a call." And then he pitched me on the call. He was literally like, "I don't want to do an interview. Let's do something bigger." So we did a workshop called The Game of Money last year, which was great fun.
That's awesome.
And what it came down to was like, what would make him go, now that one's different. I have to respond to this. The leverage is too good. I was pitched in 2024 by Microsoft. "Hi, Richard. We'd like to do a paid post with you. Can we give you a free Surface Pro and a load of money, please?" that's a good pitch on a first message, you know? And so the question is not, is it okay to, it's always okay to when your leverage is big enough. If you have a compelling enough thing. And the final thing I'll say, I know you're going to agree, is compelling to who? Just because you think it's good doesn't mean it is for them.
That's important.
And that's where people fall down, where it's like, Elon Musk, will you work with me on a new business, please?
Yeah,
I really, really, really would like to. It's like, good for you, man. But like, he's probably getting that a bit more. You need to have something with a bit more leverage. So it has to be compelling for them, not just for you, for sure.
Yep, 100%. If you're mapping the right observation that you're making with exactly what you said, the leverage, that's important. And if you don't have, the best leverage that you always will have is the results that you generate from your customers. So that's just another take as well. If you don't have, because some people may be like, well, I don't have a leverage per se because I don't have an audience, I don't create content, And I say, okay, well, look at the results you brought your clients, right? And then if you don't have that, you have to think about what is the leverage I can bring? Well, that's just you having a really good message based on the observations you found. So there's always levels to it, but I'm in alignment with you 100%.
And the thing is, when I made a sale on a new product, I remember in 2006, where literally no one had joined it, I was like, I need to just show them I want it enough. And I went small. I was like, I need someone to just believe in me. And my passion aligned with, luckily I found someone's desperate need. That became a sale, and we worked our faces off, man, to get them results, because then the next company over, I could leverage that in front of them. And then you build virus-like, you get bigger that way. It's just, sometimes you haven't got much to go on, but it might be that you're like, I remember a lot of them, because I was willing to do a little bit extra. Like, I happened to actually be in Zurich next. Why didn't I come over?
Yeah.
You're different. I'm willing to, and I'm, I've closed deals purely because I was the one who's bothered to do the extra. Let's do one last quick one. I've got Alex Smith here. How do you feel about the first message after the connection? I think it means connection acceptance with a prospect, and asking a question about a problem. Sometimes even questions can feel like pitching. How do you feel about that first message after a LinkedIn connection should be?
So I would reframe it. I'm not, I don't know, maybe some people won't like the statement, but it is what it is. I've done all different types of messaging. I'm not a fan of trying to be like nice or beating around the bush. Like, I'm here to basically have a conversation with you that will most likely lead to business. And I think everyone here can agree to that. And so I just don't think we have time to beat around the bush, to be fair. There's ways to do that. And that's just not me. So the reframe here is, it's not pitching. It's an invitation. It's an invitation to start a conversation. That's how I think about things. I'm asking you a question. I'm making these observations that are legit, and I'm seeing if that is part of your world. If it's not, it is what it is. I'll move on to the next person. But I just reframe it as in, I'm not pitching. I'm literally not pitching anyone, actually. All I'm doing is stating observations that I know or believe to be true. And I'm asking you and inviting you to a conversation. And if you want to accept the invite to start a conversation, great. If you don't, there's someone else that probably is willing to have this conversation. And if you reframe it that way, I think it's just better that way, because I think, and I'm a victim of this, will overthink, is this a pitch? Does it sound too salesy? It's like, you know what you know, and you know what it feels like. Just think about, how do I start conversations? And it will change the way you think about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there's lots of little 1% we could do here and there, but like,
sure,
the main thing is the main thing, and ultimately, it's really simple. Like, if we reach out to someone and we have something compelling enough to say, they would want to speak to us. So you're right. It's about, can we start a conversation, and what we're looking for in their response or not is, are there signals that they're willing to play ball? And if so, it's all go. And often, and the reframe was immense for me when I was like 24 years old. And I just remember when I was like, basically, if they answer the call and when I do the initial thing, they're like, oh, okay, or they answer the question, and it's like, it's downhill from there. Because they're like, I will play ball. And the moment they interact, it's mine to lose, basically. Unless I've misdone my lead. The moment they're like, well, I don't want to listen to this. Well, now it's going to be a bit harder. But that's basically feedback. Your leverage isn't good enough. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Let's finish up, man. An hour went quick. I loved it. It's great hanging out, and I think we scratched the surface, mate. What you got going on at the moment? How can people find out about you? What's the latest in your world before we sign off?
Yeah. What's the latest on my world? My commitment right now is how do you help most likely sales teams, but some of y'all are business owners in here, but salespeople and business owners be magnetic, intuitive, and consistent in the work that they do, especially in an AI world. So how I do that is I share content on LinkedIn, so you can follow me, engage with me there. I also share content on YouTube as well if you want to see more longer forms, just diving deeper than what we've done today. And then if your business wants to generate more pipeline, theampsocial.com, that's my business, and that's what we're doing to help people be more magnetic, intuitive, and consistent in the work that they do.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone who watched. Thank you everyone watching the replay. Cheers for the questions. Morgan, we have to dash. I have to make dinner for my daughters. There we are.
Do your thing.
Back to reality. Thank you so much, my friend. It was, wasn't it? But let's do it again soon.
It was. Absolutely. Cheers.